They told us we were free, that if we worked hard, played by the rules, and never gave up, one day we'd make it. The house, the steady job, the backyard with the grill and the white picket fence, maybe even 2 cars in the garage and a golden retriever wagging its tail when we came home from work. That was the promise, the American dream. A dream sold to millions across generations as the ultimate reward for effort, discipline, and faith in the system. But behind the glittering surface of opportunity and self-determination lies a darker truth. According to a recent survey by LendingTree, 64% of Americans now live paycheck to paycheck. That's nearly 2/3 of the population. Even more staggering, 46% of them have been stuck in that cycle consistently, without a break. Think about that. Nearly half of Americans work full-time, sometimes even multiple jobs, just to make it from one bill to the next. No savings, no security, one medical emergency or unexpected repair away from collapse. And this isn't just a temporary setback. For many, it's become a way of life. They hustle not to get ahead, but simply to stay afloat, to keep the lights on, to afford insulin, to pay rent, to put gas in the car that gets them to the job they secretly resent. This is not the dream. This is quiet desperation dressed up in the language of hope and grit. We've been taught to believe that success is a straight line, from school to career to family to retirement. But in reality, the line zigzags, breaks, and often ends in burnout long before it reaches any finish line. The so-called dream has turned into a treadmill, always running, never arriving. And the worst part? Most people still believe it's their fault. That if they're struggling, they must not be working hard enough. That they made bad choices. That if they just got one more certification, or woke up earlier, or learned how to manifest, things would finally get better. But what if the problem isn't the individual? What if the system is rigged? Because when 2/3 of a nation can't afford to pause, breathe, or plan for the future, that's not a glitch in the system. That is the system. A machine that demands endless productivity while promising freedom, but delivering exhaustion. A culture that tells you to chase financial independence, but hands you a lifetime of debt instead. A society that says you're free, but binds you with invisible chains made of mortgage payments, rising healthcare costs, and student loans you'll die before repaying. The American dream was supposed to be about self-determination. But what kind of freedom is it if your survival depends on your obedience to a structure that benefits from your fatigue? We're not saying ambition is bad or that success is a lie, but maybe it's time to ask a more uncomfortable question. Is the American dream really about freedom? Or is it a sophisticated form of modern slavery? Not slavery with whips and chains, but with contracts, expectations, and shame. Slavery that tells you you're lucky just to have a job. Slavery that masks itself as opportunity, but rewards only the few who were never playing the same game. You see, it's not just about what we were promised. It's about what we've been programmed to believe. And it's time to start questioning. Because the longer we wait for that dream to deliver, the deeper we sink into a reality we never chose. This is where the deception begins, and this is where we begin to expose it. But here's the deeper problem. It's not just that the system extracts your labor, it's that it also reshapes your mind. Friedrich Nietzsche saw it clearly over a century ago. He warned us about something called slave morality. Not a morality forced by chains or threats, but one that grows inside us, subtle, silent, and voluntary. Nietzsche believed that societies don't just control people with rules. They shape the way we define good and evil so that we end up controlling ourselves. And here's how it works. Over time, the oppressed, those with little power, start praising traits like humility, obedience, and endurance. Not because those things are inherently good, but because they're the only values they can afford to have. In a world where power is out of reach, they redefine virtue as submission. They begin to believe that good people suffer quietly, that the right thing is to be patient, compliant, self-sacrificing. They internalize struggle as noble and view ambition with suspicion, and over time, they police themselves. Sound familiar? It's the same morality at the heart of modern hustle culture. We're told to grind, to push through, to wake up at 5 a.m., swallow our exhaustion, and keep moving. We wear stress like a badge of honor. We brag about never taking a break, about being always on. We post photos of our calendars packed from sunrise to midnight and call it discipline. But what is it really? It's glorified servitude. It's slave morality rebranded as self-help. We've come to believe that overwork is a sign of virtue, that if we're tired, anxious, and burnt out, it means we're doing life right. And worst of all, we shame those who step off the treadmill, call them lazy, undisciplined, as if the only way to prove your worth is to bleed for a system that never bleeds for you. Nietzsche would have told us, this isn't virtue, it's conditioning. He saw that the morality of the masses often serves the interests of the powerful. When we learn to worship endurance, we stop asking who benefits from our suffering. When we glorify perseverance without purpose, we become easier to manage, easier to exploit. You don't have to be in chains to be enslaved. Sometimes all it takes is a belief, planted early, repeated often, that your suffering is sacred, that your exhaustion is meaningful, that to rest is to fail. But let's ask the obvious question, who does this belief really serve? It serves employers who profit from unpaid overtime. It serves corporations that measure your worth in metrics, not in meaning. It serves a culture that fears what might happen if people actually pause long enough to question the game they're playing. And so many of us keep running, not toward freedom, not toward fulfillment, but because we're afraid of what slowing down might reveal. Nietzsche challenged us not to blindly accept inherited values. He called on us to create our own, based not on fear or submission, but on strength, courage, and the will to live authentically. But to do that, we must first see the cage, because no system is more effective than the one that convinces its captives that they're free and that suffering is a sign of virtue. And if that sounds familiar, it's because you're living in it. If Nietzsche revealed how morality can be used to condition people into obedience, then Machiavelli takes us further, showing how power can be maintained not through fear or violence, but through perception. Niccolò Machiavelli, often misunderstood as a cynical strategist, simply understood reality. In his view, the most effective way to rule was not through brute force, but through the art of illusion. As he wrote in The Prince, a leader does not need to be virtuous. He only needs to appear virtuous. People, he observed, are more easily managed when they believe they are choosing their own fate. And that's exactly how modern society functions. We're told we're free to choose, free to pursue success, free to be anything. But this freedom is carefully shaped. Beneath the banner of liberty lies a complex web of obligations designed to keep us working, consuming, and never questioning the path we're on. This is not some wild conspiracy. It's a structure that exists in plain sight, and the numbers speak for themselves. According to Experian, the average American household carries over $100,000 in total debt. Student loan debt in the U.S. has reached over $1.7 trillion. And despite political debates, millions of borrowers remain trapped in repayment cycles that affect their job choices, their ability to start families, and even their mental health. But perhaps the most devastating statistic is this. More than 60% of personal bankruptcies in America are tied to medical expenses. This is not happening in a poor country. It's happening in the richest one on earth. Now ask yourself, what kind of freedom leaves people bankrupt for getting sick? What kind of autonomy requires you to choose between paying rent and affording insulin? This isn't liberty. This is dependency dressed up in patriotic colors. And Machiavelli would have admired it, not because it's just, but because it works. The threat is no longer jail or exile. It's losing your job, your health care, your home. It's being buried in interest rates, late fees, and bills that never stop coming. And the genius of it all is that you think you signed up for this. You took out the loan, you clicked, "I agree." You accepted the terms. The illusion is complete when the cage is invisible and the prisoner believes he's free. Meanwhile, the system offers just enough choice to make you feel empowered. New phone plans, political parties, online degrees, but never enough choice to truly escape. You are encouraged to keep running. Don't stop. Don't ask why your 40-hour job doesn't cover basic living costs. Don't ask why your health is a commodity. Don't ask why your education costs more than a house. Just keep chasing the next milestone and believe it's progress. Machiavelli warned rulers to never let the people see the structure beneath the stage. In modern times, the stage is brighter, more entertaining, more personalized, but the structure remains. Power doesn't need to punish the masses if it can keep them occupied, indebted, and just hopeful enough to believe tomorrow will be better. And that's how control operates today. Not by restricting movement, but by shaping belief. Not by silencing dissent, but by making sure you're too tired to speak. This is how modern power endures. Not through tyranny, but through a carefully crafted illusion of choice. A narrative so persuasive that it convinces people to finance their own captivity. Until we confront not only the results of the system, but the myths that sustain it, we will continue to live in a story written for us, not by us. But illusions don't just keep you obedient, they keep you exhausted. Welcome to the new form of slavery, a system not built on chains and masters, but on deadlines, debt, and dopamine. In this system, your worth is measured by your output. Your value is determined by how much you can endure without breaking. And for millions, that pressure is no longer metaphorical. It's physically unbearable. Consider this. Reports surfaced that Amazon workers were urinating in bottles because they weren't allowed enough time for bathroom breaks. That's not a dystopian novel. That's real life. In one of the wealthiest corporations on Earth. Workers moving so fast under so much pressure, they can't stop to meet basic human needs. And this pressure doesn't just exist in warehouses. It's in offices, restaurants, hospitals, and homes. Whether you're behind a cash register or on back-to-back Zoom calls, the expectation is constant. Stay productive, stay available, stay grateful. The glorification of overwork has become the new gospel. We wear burnout like a badge. We brag about 12-hour days, celebrate no days off, and compete to see who can function on less sleep. But behind the hustle, there's quiet desperation. The pressure never ends. The goalposts keep moving. And no matter how fast you run, you never quite arrive. Then comes the second half of the trap, consumption. The system that drains your energy is the same one that sells you relief. After work, you scroll, you shop, you compare. Social media bombards you with curated lifestyles, luxury, and success stories that make you feel behind. Your phone tells you that your kitchen isn't modern enough. Your wardrobe isn't stylish enough. Your life isn't good enough. And to soothe that insecurity, you spend. You buy gadgets, skincare routines, online courses, anything to feel like you're progressing. But the high never lasts, because comparison is a game you were designed to lose. The system feeds on your exhaustion and your insecurity. It tells you to hustle endlessly, then makes you feel inadequate, no matter how hard you try. It keeps you working for things you don't need, to impress people you don't know, while quietly convincing you that this is freedom. But this is not liberty. This is dependency dressed up as ambition. And the most brilliant part? You blame yourself. If you're not succeeding, it's because you're lazy. If you're overwhelmed, it's because you lack discipline. So you push harder, dig deeper, grind longer, never realizing the machine was never meant to reward you, only to use you. We've been taught that suffering is noble, that exhaustion is admirable, that to rest is to fail. But what if fatigue isn't a sign you're doing life right? What if it's a warning that something is deeply wrong? This is not a glitch, it's the design. A system that demands everything from you, your time, your focus, your peace, and gives you just enough to survive. Not enough to rest, not enough to think, just enough to keep going. This is modern slavery, not enforced by chains, but by subscriptions, not controlled by masters, but by metrics. You are free to choose any path as long as you stay inside the maze. And unless we see the cage for what it is, we will keep calling it opportunity. We will keep chasing freedom down a corridor that only leads back to the starting point. Because the hardest prisons to escape are the ones we don't even realize we're in. But no illusion lasts forever. Sooner or later, something breaks. Maybe it's your body, maybe it's your mind, or maybe, just maybe, it's your belief in the system itself. That's where the awakening begins. Not with rage or revolution, but with a quiet, piercing realization. You were never truly free, but you can be. This is where Nietzsche steps back into the story. Over a century ago, he warned us about slave morality, a system of values that taught people to be obedient, humble, and self-sacrificing. Not because those traits were noble, but because they served the interests of the powerful. But Nietzsche didn't stop at diagnosis. He offered a vision of liberation. He called it the Übermensch, the overman, not a tyrant or a brute, but an individual who rises above inherited beliefs and creates their own meaning. A person who refuses to let society define their worth, who rejects quiet suffering and dares to live with intention. Becoming the Übermensch isn't about ego or dominance. It's about reclaiming authorship of your own life. It's about no longer measuring your value by productivity or your happiness by possessions. It's about asking, what do I want truly beyond what I've been told to want? That's the first step to real freedom. Not escape from the world, but escape from the mental chains that keep you running in circles. And Machiavelli, he offers a different but equally vital perspective. He didn't romanticize human nature. He saw the world as it was, strategic, messy, and often cruel. His advice wasn't for dreamers, it was for survivors. In The Prince, he wrote that a wise leader must understand the rules of power, not to become a tyrant, but to avoid being manipulated by one. And that's the key today. To see the structure beneath the stage. To understand the game you've been thrown into so you can stop being played by it. Because real power, real autonomy doesn't come from rebellion alone. It comes from awareness, from seeing through the illusion and then deciding how you want to live. It's the freedom to say no. No to endless hustle. No to debt-fueled status games. No to sacrificing your well-being for someone else's profit. So what does that look like in practice? It starts with financial autonomy. Not chasing riches to prove your worth, but building stability so you're not at the mercy of every paycheck. It means learning to live below your means, not because you're afraid, but because you're free. It means breaking the cycle of debt, resisting the pressure to constantly upgrade, and realizing that freedom isn't about owning more, it's about needing less. Then comes minimalism, not as a trend, but as a philosophy, a conscious choice to strip away the noise, the clutter, the constant desire for more. To find contentment not in accumulation, but in clarity. When you remove the unnecessary, you create space for rest, for purpose, for life. And finally, it means reclaiming meaning, not the meaning handed to you by ads, influencers, or institutions, but the meaning you carve out for yourself. Maybe it's art, maybe it's nature, maybe it's showing up fully for the people you love. Whatever it is, it's yours. And that makes all the difference, because in a world that profits from your confusion, clarity is an act of rebellion. In a system that thrives on your exhaustion, choosing rest is revolutionary. And in a culture that measures everything in money and metrics, finding meaning on your own terms is the ultimate form of resistance. You don't have to burn it all down, but you do have to wake up. And when you do, you'll see the door that was always there, quiet, waiting, unlocked. So now we return to the question we started with: is the American dream a path to freedom, or a beautifully packaged illusion? Because if freedom means waking up each day in control of your time, your choices, your mind, then most people aren't free. If it means being able to rest without guilt, to think without fear, to live without chasing something you don't even want, then no, this isn't freedom. It's a performance, a carefully crafted script handed to you at birth. Go to school, get a job, buy a house, stay busy, don't ask questions. And whatever you do, don't fall behind. But real freedom doesn't come from a paycheck. It doesn't come from status, approval, or the perfect Instagram feed. Real freedom begins with awareness, with seeing the cage for what it is, even if everyone around you calls it a castle. Because once you see it, you can choose, not just how to survive, but how to live. Nietzsche told us to go beyond borrowed values, to stop obeying systems that strip us of joy and call it virtue. He challenged us to build lives rooted in authenticity, not obedience. And Machiavelli, in his own way, reminded us that power lies in perception. That if you don't understand the game, you will be used by it. But if you do understand, then you can rewrite the rules. So what does that mean for you? It means you get to ask the question most people are too tired to ask. Am I living my own life, or someone else's idea of what my life should be? That's the real revolution, not rage, not rebellion, but reclaiming your agency, your attention, your decisions, your direction. It means stepping off the treadmill, not because you've given up, but because you've finally woken up. It won't be easy. You'll be told you're wasting your potential, that you're not playing the game right, that you're being unrealistic. But what's more unrealistic? Spending your one precious life in constant exhaustion, or choosing a path that actually feels like yours. You don't need to burn bridges, or quit your job tomorrow, or move to a cabin in the woods. You just need to start with one simple shift: awareness. Start seeing where your energy goes. Start noticing what makes you feel alive and what quietly kills you. Then begin to choose, piece by piece, the life you actually want. A life defined not by what you consume or accomplish, but by what you value, by who you are when no one's watching. Because true freedom isn't loud, it's not flashy, it doesn't need a slogan or a sales pitch. True freedom is quiet. It looks like presence, like peace, like waking up and knowing this day is mine. So we end where we began, with a dream, but not the American dream, your dream. The one buried under obligations, masked by expectations, blurred by comparison. The one that's still waiting for you, behind the noise, beneath the hustle, beyond the illusion. You don't need permission. You don't need more time. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to begin. Because freedom was never something you had to earn. It was something you were always meant to claim. And now you see the truth. So the final question is simple. Will you keep sleeping through someone else's dream? Or will you finally wake up and build your own?